Good afternoon. This is Sandy Gabe. I am the AAUW California President-elect and your technical host for our session today. I welcome you to our Lunch and Learn series on entrepreneurship. Is it for you? We have a delightful session for you today with two speakers. Sharon Siebert, who is the AAUW California Director, will be interviewing Yvonne Campos for about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, and we have about 45 minutes. So we'll vary the session based on the number of questions we have and how well their conversation goes. They are acquainted already, they're good friends, and so I am sure that we could probably fill up several hours if we needed to, because they know a lot about each other and have a lot of information to share. So I'm going to turn this over to Sharon so that she can introduce Yvonne. I'm going to also change the screen. I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll put Sharon and Yvonne in the middle of the screen so that you can see them together. Okay, Sharon, go ahead.
Hi, welcome. I wanted to first of all say welcome to our first Lunch and Learn event, and I am delighted to be able to introduce to you my dear friend and the most successful serial entrepreneur I know, who has a national reputation. This is Yvonne Campos. She's set up 3 very successful businesses. So we're going to be talking about what you as women might want to know about entrepreneurship, especially given the fact that this has been called a she session, with women being negatively impacted by the pandemic, and also the great resignation, where women are leaving their jobs. So Yvonne, what would be the most important thing you would tell a woman who's considering starting a business today?
Well, I think it has to be something that she's put a little bit of thought into, not just a knee-jerk reaction because you're leaving your job or because you're resigning a job because of what's happening now. But I will say that the entrepreneurs I know, in my own experience, is that sometimes you need a motivator like this to make that decision. You've been thinking about it for a while. You're still working, or you're working at home, or you're working in a work environment, and something happens where it gives you the opportunity to think about becoming or starting your own business. The real issue is, what kind of business is that going to be, and what is your life going to be like if you do that? Usually you're trying to solve a problem. Most companies are started because they're solving a problem of some sort, and so that in fact there will be a need for your product or service. So something to think about is, what is it? What kind of business do you want to start? What is it? And I would do some preliminary work as far as looking at and trying to figure out what the competition looks like. Who else is doing similar things? What kinds of things are they offering? How is your product or service going to be different? Why would somebody want yours versus theirs? That kind of thing. But it is I will say one thing. It doesn't have to be all perfect before you take the step, but you have to think it through. It is a huge commitment.
And is there a particular educational background that you would recommend for someone starting their own business?
Well, I know entrepreneurs that never went to college. I know entrepreneurs that have PhDs. I know entrepreneurs that have MBAs. I know all kinds of entrepreneurs. It really is about who you are and your ability to be motivated to create a business and decide there's something that you want to create and offer to the world, I think. I do think that there are many, many more programs and opportunities to get entrepreneurial training than before when I started, which was many years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So there are opportunities to get sort of initial entrepreneurial training at incubators and accelerators across the country. And if I were doing this now, I would certainly at least explore those offerings to see what's going on. A lot of the universities have, for example, here in Pittsburgh, a lot of the universities have a Center for Women Entrepreneurship. They have accelerators that you can participate in, that you go in with a cohort. They help you build the foundation for the building to then take it forward. So there are a lot more resources than there once was. But really, it depends on you, who you are and what you want to do and accomplish.
What would be the problems or the challenges with regard to funding a startup business, whether it's a Main Street business, as you've mentioned, like a beauty salon, or an other type of service business or non-service business, but product centered?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that any business owner, any entrepreneur, any business owner is having capital, getting capital to support the business. And so obviously you're going to have some either dollars to help build the business and or dollars to help support you along the way, you know, if you're trying to do this on your own. But the question is, where do you find capital in order to get something started? Some people start a business by doing a side gig versus leaving their job and then doing this. They actually do a side gig so that they can have some income coming in and start building at least some preliminary foundation for the business, developing the product, maybe getting a couple of customers, exploring sort of opportunities and so forth. The other thing is that there's sort of a timeline for dollars, but initially, if you've already sort of set yourself in motion, most entrepreneurs get their own dollars, because you're investing your own money into this idea. If you're not prepared to invest your own dollars in your company, why would anybody else? And friends and family. That's the first sort of recourse that you have. Who do you know that that would have an interest and that knows the kind of person that you are and would be confident in you and your ability to move this idea forward? Who are those people that would be willing to support you financially? That's one other thing. I know when I started my first business, or actually was it my first one? Yes, the first formal business. It would have been, I had a piece of property in Texas. I grew up in Texas, and I had a piece of property there that I kept with, even though I moved to Pittsburgh. And I went and refinanced that piece of property so that I could have a chunk of cash to be able to invest in the company and get it started. But I think the real thing is, or you find co-investors and co-partners, co-founders. Everybody brings some dollars to the company to get it started. But it is a huge challenge. A huge challenge is having enough capital to move the company forward.
So how do you decide when you have to make a profit or when you have to close your business, if that's an issue?
Well, I think that here's the question. Do you have to close the business or do you have to pivot the business? Do you have to, obviously it's a very tough road. You have to be prepared to really work 24/7. I used to falsely think, oh, if I start my own business, I'll have a lot more flexibility because I can do what I want to do whenever I want to do it. And in fact, that's just completely wrong, because you're working more and you're working harder. I'm not trying to scare people off. I'm just trying to tell you that it's a big commitment, and that it really is kind of an all-consuming decision. Because that's what it takes to move from an idea to a product or service into a company. And you have to be prepared to do that. And I would tell you that your family has to be on that road with you. They have to be able to be supportive, especially your spouse and your family and your whatever kind of support system that you have in place. Because it is going to take a lot of your time, especially women, in the sense that with the household and the children and so forth. And one of the best things I always said is that the best thing about being an entrepreneur and having my own company, I could take my kids to my company anytime I wanted. Nobody would say anything to me about it at that time. You know, when they'd be sick and couldn't go to childcare or daycare or to school, I could put a pallet in my office and have the babies with me. So I don't know that I would get the Best Mother of the Year award, but the point is you can do those things much more easily when you're running the company. But what you're really doing is all your customers and your employees are your boss, really. And so your commitment and availability is really pretty much 24/7.
So you mentioned possibility of taking, instead of closing your firm, pivoting. What do you mean by that?
Well, really, is it something that you are doing now that's not working, but that if you change it a little bit, there's a bigger opportunity? For example, just use COVID, for example. There's companies that were doing their business during COVID, and if they would have kept on the same path that they were doing, they'd probably be out of business. We've had some companies that we know that started pivot the company a little bit to add products and services that would be beneficial or important during this COVID time. So the question is, and it's not just COVID that would do that, anything in the marketplace that has an impact on your ability to gain customers, you need to be looking at the customers and understanding the customers throughout the whole process, so that if you need to change the product a little bit or get feedback that says, this is great, but, and you're able to address that so that your product then it becomes more helpful to the end user, then absolutely you need to be doing those things.
So how do you determine when it is time to hire an employee, and how do you figure out what types of employees you would like to hire, or who you should hire?
The question is, here's the problem with being an entrepreneur initially, is that you always need people, you just don't have any money to pay people. So that's a challenge. And so it really is about, initially it's you and you're doing everything basically. Let me put it this way. It depends on what kind of business you're going to start. If you're starting a consultancy, that's a different story. You're going to be an independent consultant. You're going to have clients and you're going to run that business more of a consultancy and not really build it where you have 50 consultants. Also, if you're building more of a Main Street type of business, which is more of a lifestyle business, you can live very nicely, making good money, having a Main Street business, which is really more, for example, retail businesses on Main Street, restaurants, hairdressers, craft, making jewelry, that kind of thing. You can do all that, and it really, and it will give you a lifestyle. It won't necessarily scale and grow, not unless you make it do that, to go like you'll have a hairdresser that has multiple locations all over the country and so on and so forth. Yes, that can be done. But a lot of people have companies and businesses that are local and do great and do absolutely wonderful. The question is for you to think about the business you're trying to start, and what is it? Is it a lifestyle business, or is it really a scalable business? And when we think about what's happening in the environment in the last, let's say, 10 years with sort of technology and so forth, the tech business, those have all been scalable businesses, is what people are looking for. They're SaaS-based businesses and so forth. Those are scalable businesses. And really that kind of an entrepreneur is building a product or a service, a platform, a software, whatever it might be, hardware. And then they're building it up to a certain point and want to be acquired. And they want an exit. They want to build it to a certain point, have investors invest in it to help them take it to the early stage, and then they want to be acquired. Not everybody wants that. You can be an entrepreneur and not do that. I think sometimes we forget the majority of businesses out there are not like that. But all the hype and all the dollars and all the excitement are around really tech-based businesses. And there've been some amazing ones. There's no question. There's some fabulous ones. Warby Parker and who's the woman with the hair color? Madison Reed. Look at what she's doing with her technology. It's about hair color. But to really think about what kind of business you're going to want to be doing, because you either have a passion for it, you have a skill for it, you've worked in it and have seen that there's these areas that you could do differently that would shoot it up to another level, because you've worked in it, and what's current out there is not going to change, but you can introduce a newer version, a newer model, a newer approach that's going to make a huge difference. So you need to think about all those things. I always say that one of the things I was learning on the fly, basically. I don't have an MBA, and I have a college degree, but I don't have an MBA. And I started as a consultant and then chose to, every time I could see opportunities to go to the next level, to make it bigger, to go to the next level, I was able to do that. Do that. But the question is really, what kind of business do you want to create? How is it a lifestyle business? Is it a scalable business, or something in between? And I wish I would have thought of all of that early on versus as I learned and grew and grew and grew. I had a significant lifestyle business that I was able to sell, but I didn't sell my business till after 30 years. When you're looking at big scalable businesses in the tech industry, they want to sell, within 5 to 7 years. Life sciences maybe within 10 to 15 years. So it really depends on what you're trying to do and what skills that you have to bring to the party.
So are there any fields that are particularly friendly or non-friendly to women entrepreneurs?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that the technology field, biotech, technology, life sciences have fewer women, but that's changing, dramatically changing. And one of the key issues is that women are unable to find the capital they need to get the support. I think we were talking earlier, Sharon, that only 2% of venture capital goes to women-owned business, women-founded businesses, believe it or not. Out of all the billions of dollars that are distributed out there, only 2% go to women-led companies. And so that is changing now. And so I think those opportunities, those doors are opening up. But I think what you have to do is something you love. I mean, I cannot think of anything more horrible than working this hard and not loving what you're doing. So it has to be something that you're really passionate about. And it's either you're passionate about because you're making a change, or you're passionate about because it has a great impact somehow down the way. Or in a lifestyle business, you love what you're doing, you're good at it, your clients love it, they keep coming back to you. And you're making a difference in the lives of your employees. You're creating jobs. You're supporting those families. There's a lot of benefits along the way, obviously.
So, did you have particular mentors? You mentioned that you were in a business that you figured out you could be a consultant in, and then how did you extrapolate that into the larger firm that you then ended up having?
Yeah, well, I was working in educational research for a number of years. And this was in the 70s, I guess, basically. And the company I was working for hired a market research company to come in and do a needs assessment for us. And I was on the team that was working for that company, with that outside consultant. And so at the end of that project, that consultant hired 2 of us. In other words, stole 2 people from their client. And brought me to Pittsburgh to help be part of the team that was going to open a market research company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But they were servicing one major client at that time, which was H.J. Hunt. So it was a great opportunity. It doubled the money I was making at the time. Seemed like a great idea at the time. But I was moving from Austin, Texas to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and made that decision. And I always thought, well, I'll go up there, the headquarters of the research companies in Texas and Dallas, and I'll be able to come back sometime. I was going to give it about 5 years. Here I am, 45 years later, still in Pittsburgh and loving every minute of it. But when I got up here, I did some work with that research company at Hines, and then it was time to change the team out, and I basically got fired, actually. And so when I got fired, then that's when it motivated. That's what I'm saying. Something sometimes happens that motivates you to do these things. It doesn't have to be a positive thing, to be a negative thing. And so I had the opportunity. I thought, okay, well, I've learned from this market research company for the last few years. What can I do? And I loved what I was doing, what I had learned and what I was doing, which was qualitative research. And so I said, I can be a qualitative research consultant. So I started basically what my goal was introduce myself to every agency in town, advertising agency in town, because those are the people that were using us the most, using qualitative researchers, so that anytime my name was mentioned, the person that it was mentioned to would have already heard it. That was my goal. It made me seem much more far enough along in the business structure, made it seem like my business was larger. One thing is my company always was perceived to be much larger than it ever was. But that was basically the branding and what we created. But that opportunity then of getting fired and then doing something independently, and then learning that industry, learning that aspect of being an entrepreneur, and then realizing there's a gap in the marketplace in Pittsburgh and we could use a full service research house here, because I've been traveling around the country, took that opportunity to say, oh, we don't have that here. I can create that here. And so it just moves on like that. You have to be willing to take the risk.
And what would you do differently if you were starting a business today than you did then, given the fact that we are so much more technological and can work from anywhere, basically?
I think really, I just wish I would have known more. I didn't know anything. I just did it. And that was okay too. But my point is, I would have thought bigger. I would have approached the business thinking it could get bigger. It was getting bigger, and I wanted it to get bigger, but it never was strategic that way. It never was strategic. And the other thing I learned is when you're starting a business, you also need to think about how you want to exit it. And again, you need to do that sooner than later. How you want to exit at one point in time, whether that is your kids inherited, or you sell it to your employees, or you want to be bought out, whatever it is. But thinking about that early on helps you plan how to get there and how to make that happen in the later years. But I think it's really about thinking bigger. I think the possibilities are limitless, really.
So I'd like you to talk a moment about the Next Act Fund, the last business that you basically started, and explain how that became so successful for people to understand where money is.
Yeah. Well, Next Act Fund is a woman-focused angel fund. We invest in women-led, women-run companies. And basically, the way that, and that was something completely new. I had done a little bit of investing, direct investing, angel investing on my own, but I really wasn't familiar with the field at all. But I had one of my WPO members, I used to facilitate 2 chapters of the WPO, Women Presidents Organization. These were all women that had businesses with over $1 million in revenue. And we met, you can't have more than 20 members in each chapter and non-competing companies, because it's really, you meet every month to talk about how to grow your businesses. And so it's a peer-to-peer group, WPO. One of my members, it was a serial entrepreneur and was going to do another business. And she said, told everyone, and we were saying, you go girl, that's fantastic. We're behind you, good idea, blah, blah, blah. So she did. She built the product and so forth. She was trying to raise money. And here she was a successful serial entrepreneur, had a great track record, had the product, had some clients, had some revenue, and was having trouble raising money. So we were having coffee one Saturday, and she was talking about it and how difficult it was. And I said to her, well, you know what? I have some money. I know some other women that have some money. Let me see what I can do. And that was the start of it. I created a single purpose LLC to invest in that one company. And we've actually invested twice in that company. We did a follow-up investment and it's doing very well. We got one exit out of it. We have a second exit coming out of it. But when that happened in my market, I had women coming up to me saying, oh, I heard you put this deal together. I never get asked to participate in a deal. I'm interested. I have some money. I'd want to do something with it, but I don't know anything about it. And so I had a number of women that came in, approached me as if I was an expert to want to do this. And what really happened then is I started doing my own research to find out what was going on in the marketplace. And there was the trends on the East Coast and the West Coast for women-led funds. And so I talked with about a dozen of those funds to see what their structures were like. I did some research with the marketplace here to see, are there women accredited investors? You have to have a certain level of resources to become an accredited investor. And there were plenty of women here that met those criteria. So I did some research. I did some large focus groups, explained what I was thinking about. This is what it's going to look like, taste like, feel like. What do you think? I had women that volunteered in those groups and said, I'm in, I'm in. So then what happens is then I have to do it, right? We've done all the research. I have to do it now. And so we just built it at that point. And I can't tell you this, Sharon, one of the, not knowing how the structure is every time in that business in a particular industry allows you the flexibility to think about putting it together a little bit differently. And that's what we did. And that's why it was so successful.
So I wanted to mention that we have a question from one of our viewers who says she's a semi-retired electrical instrument engineer. I don't understand the rest of the technology she's talking about, but she's thinking about starting her own engineering business. So what would you say to her that she should consider doing at this stage, since she, quote, says she's semi-retired?
Well, the first thing I would do, not knowing anything about what kind of technology you have or engineering capacity you have, but what's happening out there in that space, I would look at that first. And if you see a gap anywhere, or if you can improve on something that's being done already, or if you understand the end user to know that, yes, what I'm using now is fantastic, but if it only did X also, I'd pay for that. I'd switch. So that's what I would find out, is do some homework on what are you doing? What is the product or service that you can provide that people are not getting right now? And again, think now, are you wanting to create a small consultancy, engineering consultancy group? Are you trying to build a product or a system that then can be scaled? Think about all those things now and look for people in your market who have done this before, who basically built a business like, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but built the business before in your marketplace so that they can be there to guide you in a way, get some, to help you as a mentor, I guess, I would say.
You've talked so much about doing research with regard to your marketplace or your geographic area or your product. Where are the best places to go for research of this type? I mean, where would you start?
Well, I mean, I think now, obviously there's research companies you can go to, but who's got money for that when you're starting out a business, right? No one has any money. So the question would be, is where can you go? What sources can you identify? So there's a lot of data that's out there that's accessible through the internet and Google and so forth. The universities, the university libraries, all of that. I mean, I would want to understand the market that I'm trying to enter. Whether there is an opportunity there, where there's a gap there. It's sort of, if you haven't read Blue Ocean Strategy, I can't remember the author, but it's called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it talks about the founders who founded Cirque du Soleil realized that there was circuses, and then there were sort of the aerial people over here, the different kind of experience, but no one had ever put those, even thought about putting those two things together and create a completely different experience. So they were in the blue ocean, right? They were in the blue ocean. That's where you want to be. You want to be, or you have to have a product that has a differentiation that's so valuable that people are willing to take your product versus someone else's product.
So you mentioned the term accredited investor. We have a question asking for what asset or income level do you need to be considered an accredited investor, and where do you find those people?
Accredited investors just mean that, because you self-proclaim that you're an accredited investor. They very rarely, you don't really have to submit documents in most cases. But you have to have your net worth without your home has to be more than $1 million. And you have to be making, let's see, as a couple, $300,000 a year on the past few years and projected forward. As an individual, $200,000 a year, past few years are projected forward. It's not, I mean, I'm not being naive. It's good. It's a lot of money, but it's not so much money that a lot of people don't qualify. Again, let me preface that by saying that I'm not being naive. There are a lot of people that cannot qualify, and I understand that perfectly. We have a lot of people that do not fit that criteria, but we have a lot of women in particular that fit that criteria. And women are getting their money. Women are earning their own money. Women, sometimes in a divorce settlement, end up pretty well in a divorce settlement. And women are inheriting money. Women of our generation are inheriting money when their parents pass. So women have access to dollars. And in fact, I think it was by 2020, so we're way past that now. The data that I saw, we'd have, I don't know, women had access to, I don't know, $40 trillion that they could invest or, had access to. And we need to make these decisions. We need to get involved. We need to learn about. I'll tell you about the Next Act Fund. Once I started getting involved in the Next Act Fund, and if you are an accredited investor, you should think about getting involved in a fund, is that this whole, it's like, what is it? The girl that goes down the rabbit hole.
Alice.
Alice in Wonderland. I felt like Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole because there was this whole other world out there of investment, angel investing, funds, networks. And I was a professional woman. I had a company for years. I should know these things. I knew nothing. And this opened this whole door up, this whole world up that most women do not have access to, haven't been invited. We haven't been invited to the party, for one thing. And so it was fantastic to know all of this was going on and what are the amazing things women are doing nowadays and what kinds of companies are putting together and what kind of opportunities exist. Most of the time, most women don't even know that's going on.
So just briefly explain what the difference between a venture capital fund and an angel fund is, because I don't know if everybody understands that. And you taught me what that meant.
Well, an angel investing is you're putting your own money into a company. In other words, I'm an angel investor. It's my money that I'm investing in a company or my money through a fund that I'm investing. It's usually at the very early stage. There is a stage prior to that. Angel investing can do seed stage or early stage. Seed stage is sort of like, I have an idea and I need some money to get it started. Early stage is once you have the product, maybe have one or two employees, maybe you have a couple of clients. That's early stage. Next Act Fund was investing in early stage, but it's your money going into that company. VC money is really money that's been gathered from from individuals and other people, but they have managers that are investing those for you and putting that money to work and actually getting involved in many ways, helping that company and running those companies by investing in them. Venture capitalists.
So if you were
much bigger financial deals, let's put that
right. Mm-hmm. So if you were suggesting to a group of women today to become entrepreneurs, what is the biggest concern that you would have for any of them?
I'd say do it. I'd say do it. If you have a passion for it, if you feel like this is something, I know for myself, I just had to do this. I just had to do this. I had jobs. I'd worked in corporations. I'd worked with other people, but somehow or other, once I got started, I just had to do this. There really wasn't a choice. I loved it. I'm glad I did it. I would do it. I'd do it better the next time, but I would do it the same thing, but better. But so I'd say if you really are interested in becoming, or if you really have a passion about becoming an entrepreneur, the sooner you start, the better.
So your concern would be then, just because you're quitting a particular job in this great resignation, that unless you have a passion, you should consider what else you might want to do rather than starting your own business?
I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone. It isn't for everyone. So you have to know yourself enough. I think you could try it and see what you think. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the question though is you have to really want to be able to do this and be committed and have a lot of tenacity, because you are going to have lots of ups and downs. It's a hard road. It's a hard road. It's exciting and it's wonderful, but it's a very tough job. Let's put it that way.
So with regard to a lot of the questions that I have and had for you, you've answered a lot of them. Is there anything else you should be telling people who are concerned about where they're going for now? Because a lot of the women looking to be entrepreneurs are sort of mid to later life rather than younger women who seem to not be worried much about it. And let me ask this question also. Do you consider the funding that you did in the Next Act Fund as a form of microfinancing?
It's not microfinancing, but it's the next step up.
Okay.
What we did is the next step up. There are microfinancing groups and organizations out there that you can get involved with. So there's certainly that, but I would say Next Act Fund was the next level up on that scale. And if I was going to talk to women that are more mature versus the young ones, one of the things is what I have seen often that keeps women from becoming entrepreneurs is they think they need to be an expert in everything. And in fact, you don't. You have to have some expertise, there's no question, but it is finding the right team, or finding the right people, or finding the right mentors, or finding the right people that will sit down and talk with you for a little bit just to help you move forward. So it's not about perfection. It's about taking steps and moving forward. So, and you don't have to know everything, but you do have to have an idea that's worth committing to, an idea for a business. And you need to be able, here's one of the best things, one of the skills that I do have is I could talk about what I was trying to do and get other people on the train. That's what you need to be able to do also, because you can't do it alone. And I could sell the vision. I could sell where we were going. I could sell what we were trying to do for all my companies. And you have to have that skill, or at least some ability to do that, to get other people to buy in to what you're trying to do and where you're going to go.
So another question that we've been asked is and I don't know that you've had any failures, but the question is, I know you're so successful. I don't know about your failures. We won't talk about personal issues. But the question is, what were some of the key lessons you learned from any of your failures?
Failures. Yes, many failures. Small ones and bigger ones. Not thinking big enough. That's one of the failures. Another failure is, I think the hardest part about building my businesses was hiring people and trying to find the right people and the right fit. I mean, we'd hire people that, and ultimately I was a decision maker at the end. I mean, everybody participated, but I was the one that said yes or no. And you can be so wrong when you're hiring people, and they can cause damage in the company. And we had a saying, yeah, you hire too fast and you fire too slow. Every business owner hires too fast, fires too slow. And people that stay in an organization, small company, middle-sized company, big company, that are not the right fit, don't support the culture, create problems, they do so much damage. And you have to just get rid of them. And sometimes it's very hard because you need the skill that they have, the talent they have, what they can do. You need it desperately, but it's not worth it. It is not worth it. You need to get rid of them and find somebody else.
So I think we've answered a lot of the questions that have come up. It's kind of time to wrap up. I don't know that we have covered everything in the world that we could possibly cover for this topic. But as AIUW California, we're looking forward to continuing these Lunch and Learn sessions. I want to thank Yvonne, my dear friend of many, many years, for coming to us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is wonderful that we can do that with this technology.
See, this is
what
a good
would we
thing
have
about,
done if we didn't have this now?
COVID. It's a good thing about COVID. We've all gotten used to this. This is a new delivery system, right? So
exactly. So I'm going to turn this back to Sandy Gabe, our webmaster. If there's anything else that we need to deal with.
You're muted, Sandy.
You're muted. Sandy, you're still muted.
Yeah, I should know better, right? So I just wanted to say thank you to both Yvonne and Sharon. And Sharon, thank you for sharing Yvonne with us today and letting us hear from her. I took down several notes myself. I love the hires too fast, fires too slow. That happens in corporate America as well, especially the fires too slow part.
It only doesn't work if you're a solo entrepreneur. Which I've been.
Fire yourself.
I really was struck by a couple of things that were sort of aspirational. One is to think bigger. I think frequently we really limit ourselves by what we think we can do and what we know. And we know that women tend to feel like they have to be able to do 110% of a job before they'll even apply for a job. So I'm imagining that falls into the entrepreneurship category as well. And I also love that the possibilities are limitless. And I would like to leave us with that thought, your thought on creating a possibility. So I hope that you have enjoyed our session today. As Sharon mentioned, we hope to have more of these, and we hope to come back in February with another session. So keep your eye on our Facebook, Instagram, and website, and we will share our information about our upcoming events. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.